maybe not the best use case. So, it kind of took me back to as my consulting time as a fractional CMO with a lot of different companies. I would work with a lot of startups and smaller companies on the technology side. But I used to also do a lot of talks, and I would use this one slide from a guy named Scott Brinker over at Chief Marketing Technologist. And every year he would do sort of a marketing technology landscape. Starting in 2011, would post all of the different technologies and have them listed in buckets with their logos. And it started out as about 100 different marketing technology companies. So that's like email service providers like MailChimp or different Google ad type technologies, things like that. Mm-hmm. Now in 2019, that's grown to over 8,000 different technologies. And so when I would first start working with companies, a lot of times they would talk about, should I use this?
Can you say that again? What has evolved into 800 different technologies?
Yeah, so it's this Chief Marketing Technologist. It's marketing tech and tools that this guy, Scott Brinker, puts together annually. Mm-hmm. So it's grown from 100 tools to now over 8,000. So it's basically the whole...
Tools for what?
For marketing technologies.
Oh, for marketing technologies. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying for those of us that, listen really fast.
No worries. Yeah. So this marketing technology landscape has grown from 100 different tools to over 8,000 now. So I think with the recruiting industry, you're seeing a similar growth and more technologies being introduced. And I think as you start to see all the different tools, one of the more important things that you have to look at is, are you chasing these bright, shiny objects? And is this tool or technology going to actually be helpful to me? Because a lot of times when I would work with some of these startup companies, which I think is very close to recruiters, which, you are kind of your own companies, especially as you're a smaller growing agency, you need to figure out which ATSs you're going to use, which email service provider you're going to use, which technologies or text messaging or candidate outreach. And there's all these different acronyms like AI being tossed around and artificial intelligence. And is that really going to help you?
Yeah. And how am I going to use it? And I want to stay on the cutting edge. What Scott said when I asked him, his exact words, when I asked him, what has been your biggest takeaway from the industry so far? He said, the opportunity for innovation and disruption, because the staffing industry, like you said, is at least 2 years behind the curve on technology. And there's so much opportunity for, my listeners to be disruptive by using some new piece of technology in the recruiting space. Because even the largest organizations who have the capital to invest in these new technologies are still 2 to 3 years behind where they should be in recruiting technology. So, I loved what Scott had to say about that, and I'm going to use that, Scott, if you don't mind. But it's absolutely true, isn't it?
Yeah, no, and what I've realized, especially just being in the industry now, that there are the tools and the technologies that are starting to come on board, and there still are so many different opportunities out there. But recruiting still is very much a relationship-driven industry, and it is very much a high touch. And,
right. And I don't think that will ever go away. I mean, people say, it's going to be so much more. Well, yes, it's becoming more automated, but that high touch is not going to go away. And the relationship driven, in my opinion, anyway, I don't think that's going to go away. And I know a lot of people would disagree with me, but I don't think that's going away. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, because, really nobody's ever going to be able to create the AI or artificial intelligence that can really get into the mind of a hiring manager similar to a recruiter. We talk about it a lot here at Reflect on a day-to-day basis. And, where we see it is almost this cross section of high tech meets high touch, because there are tools and innovations that are out there that are going to help recruiters to be more efficient so that they can focus more on the recruiting side of things and less on all of the other administrative tasks and sales and contracts and legal and all the other not so fun stuff.
Right.
Along with running a small agency. But then, you can use certain technologies that at least can help you filter out maybe some of the candidates that aren't going to be a good fit so that you don't have to spend time screening them.
And using more than just some keywords. That's so impersonal, and you may overlook candidates that might be great just because they aren't well versed on putting in the right keywords, right?
Exactly. And I now see that on a regular basis, which is kind of frustrating for me sitting a little bit in the middle of the client and the recruiter side where I am today. And, I work a lot with recruiters to improve the resumes with their candidates just because they're not professional resume writers. And
right.
They oftentimes think of a lot of their day-to-day responsibilities as, okay, like I don't need to say that. Yeah, I don't need to say that I use these particular credit rating skills on a day-to-day basis because for someone in my industry, we do that every day. So
right. The understood. Yeah, the understood. Yeah.
So
tell us a little bit about your company, and I'm so sorry. I always say that wrong. Reflect.
Yep.
Reflect. Oh, I got it right.
Yep.
So that is such an intriguing concept, and I love it. So tell us about what your company does and your role within that umbrella.
So I help Reflic on the growth side. So Reflic is essentially a two-sided marketplace. On one side, we've got over 250 now, almost 300 clients that we work with, a lot of Fortune 500s. So
some big names.
Yeah, so like JB Hunt, Uber,
Canon, I saw. Yeah, there were some good names on there.
Marsh & McLennan. So across just about every industry and job function. And then on the other side of the fence, we work with a community of recruiters. And
suppliers, right? Like even some of the big name staffing organizations are utilizing you as an arm of business, correct?
Correct, yeah. So we have anywhere from like a 1 or 2 person small recruiting sort of startup firm to some of the largest out there like Michael Page or Randstad. And, a lot of recruiters basically see us as almost like an outsourced sales arm. So they're smaller growing agency. So with signing up on Reflic, which just takes a few minutes, you basically are able to start working on and have access to all of our clients.
And the jobs that they've posted, right?
Yeah, exactly. And all the different job orders. So you don't have to go through an approval process.
And become an approved vendor and get contracts signed and spend all that money prospecting. And, what I see is an excellent opportunity to skill market. Like you've got this great candidate as a recruiter or as an organization, you've got some great candidates, but you don't exactly have the right spot for them. Perhaps, you could find a great spot for them on Reflic.
Yeah, and that's
a lot more to it than that, but that could be a starting point for some. Not utilizing the whole business model. I mean, staffing organizations not using them 100%, but just as a sales arm or an additional revenue stream.
Exactly. And it kind of goes back to that relationship side of things where you want to maintain that relationship with their candidate and you might not have the perfect client or, what we also see with a lot of the agencies we work with, big and small, is you might be looking for a accountant with one of your clients and you're always going to have 3 or 4 great people that you're showing to your client, but then they might not end up getting hired. So then maybe there's another job that is on Replik already posted that you can then turn to and maintain that relationship.
And y'all seem to be really fair with the, the margin allocation. So, and you don't have to talk about that specifically, but I based on what he has told me, it seems quite fair, to be able to use the platform and revenue and margin that you would not have because you didn't have that specific job on your order board or in your system. It's very fair, I think, and it's very lucrative. And I think it is one of those opportunities for innovation that we have at our fingertips that perhaps many of our listeners don't know a whole lot about, even though you guys have done an excellent job of marketing and creating strategic alliances and those types of things. Perhaps they didn't know. And so I just think it's such a great concept.
Thank you. No,
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Blushing over here.
Oh, wow. Don't let me make you blush. What have been the biggest challenges that you've encountered in the staffing industry, other than the things that we've already talked about? Is there anything that you have found challenging that you've had to overcome in the staffing industry? And I know you're a newbie, but maybe there's something, your fresh eyes and your fresh perspective is so wonderful. So, is there anything that comes to mind when I ask you that question?
Yeah. So I think all of us probably are struggling with this right now, just given the current market that we're working in and unemployment being so low, which is great for the number of clients that are turning to recruiters right now. But I think one of the other challenges too is working with a lot of these clients that are so used to salaries being maybe where they were 5 or 10 years ago, and getting candidates in the door fast enough, or not having clients that are able to negotiate a little bit and sort of give a little in the process. There are definitely certain clients that refuse to speed up their process, even though the market is so hot, and they're then frustrated that they're losing the top client or top candidates. And they're looking for these, my new favorite term, which I didn't know before the industry, but purple squirrels with pink dots.
Oh, that's an oldie but goodie.
I know. So this is me and the newbie. So these purple squirrels, and you find them and you're like so excited, and they're over with the client, and then they're like, well, we need to make sure they take their technical assessment, and they need to do this and that.
Yes.
The hiring managers traveling.
The lengthy, frustrating HR process that has to happen in certain companies. And you just want to say to them, there is a way to speed this up, and I just wish more companies would get on board with that.
Yeah. And so I think that's an innovation right there for the industry. Yeah. So as recruiters, thinking through how you would speed it up on that other side, to help them be a little bit more efficient. So that's definitely one, because it's so heartbreaking to, have somebody that's moving along and, they're kind of getting strung along. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, I've got another offer on the table and it's your candidate. And, they're at the final steps right at the goal line and can't get them across.
Yeah. And the whole ghosting thing that everybody's talking about these days. I mean, that's just so frustrating. I've seen my recruiters in my former life just, want to cry sometimes because they had cultivated this candidate and the client relationship so much. And then it falls through because somebody didn't move fast enough, and it's just devastating. So that's a good one. Good.
Yeah.
So what have you enjoyed most about the staffing industry?
Honestly, it's been awesome to be able to work with so many recruiters and help them basically working for themselves. And when they make a placement, I get so excited because
you helped them.
Exactly. And in the Reflex situation, it's sort of a three-way excitement.